meeting for Thursday, March 13th for the Corporation of the Township of Minden Hills. In review of today's agenda, there's a delegation from a Rising Collective with a report on the recently completed community engagement project. As well, a closed session meeting will take place near the end of the day today. Madam Clerk, please proceed with a roll call to confirm council attendance.
Councillor Sisson.
Present.
Councillor Saini.
Present.
Councillor McKelvey.
Present.
Councillor Johannesson.
Present.
Councillor Ingram.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shell.
Present.
Mayor Carter.
Present. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. I call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, please proceed with reading the resolution for the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson. Be it resolved that the March 13th, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor McKelvey?
I, Councillor Tammy McKelvey, declare of potential direct pecuniary interest on closed agenda item 5C for the reason that my daughter works for the township.
Okay, so noted. Any others? Seeing none. We go directly to the delegations. Madam CAO, do you wish to do the introductions?
I do, Mr. Mayor, as soon as I turn on my mic. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we are pleased to have Andy Mitchell and Jen Harrington with us today from a Rising Collective. They are here to present the feedback that we've received from our community engagement program, which was launched in late 2024. If you recall, Council, this is a foundational piece for the township to develop a community priority plan or a strategic plan. The program has been characterized as very successful. I won't steal their thunder. And just as a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, Council will receive a report from me in April with recommendations on the next steps to moving us towards the community priority or strategic plan. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I will turn it back to you and over to Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Harrington. Thank you.
Please join us and welcome. Please make sure you turn on the microphone and you need to speak into the microphone so that anybody watching us will hear your dulcet tones.
Well, here you go then. Here's my dulcet tone. Thank you very much for having us here today. It's exciting to be able to present high-level results of the community engagement program. Next slide, please, Lisa. Just a reminder, the Rising Collective team consisted of 3 of us, led by Andy Mitchell, who has significant experience, municipal experience, as well as Lauren Hunter, one of our partners who lives in the Township of Minden Hills. Next slide, please. Community plans that provide meaningful direction over their duration do rely on an authentic engagement process, one that genuinely seeks input from those invested in the future of the success of the township. You did that through this engagement process, so congratulations. The township invited council, staff, community partners and champions, business and industry community members, community organizations, and the public, including both year-round and seasonal residents, to share their insights and perspectives about the future of this community. Our engagement process began with a session here with council and senior staff to first gather your input. This was followed by focus group sessions, interviews, an online survey, and 2 town hall sessions where we were able to gather input from close to 700 residents. We took everything we heard, we rolled it up by theme and presented it in this draft report that you have today. It is essentially a what we heard report. There's very little analysis or commentary from the consultant perspective. It's the voices of your community. I would like to thank staff for their support and the communications, for getting out the survey information, for inviting people to the interviews and to the focus group sessions. We couldn't have done it without their support, so thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Andy, who will talk to the high-level results.
Great. Thank you very much, Jen, and thank you, Council, for having us today as a delegation to be able to review some of these findings. I'm going to go through this at a very high level, and then if there are any questions, feel free to ask them. I understand that the report has been circulated as part of your package, so you had an opportunity to take a look at it. I want to start off my presentation, Mr. Mayor and Council, by taking this opportunity to thank the residents of Minden Hills. This engagement was successful because the people of the community were willing to engage. Over 700 folks have provided input in one way or the other. All of you are in the public realm, and so get that kind of response rate is pretty significant, and it speaks to the passion of the community for the community, and I think that speaks really, really well of the township. So we've tried to summarize the key observations into 5 points, which I'll just go over with you in the next couple of minutes. So first of all, number 1 is that people are the foundation of the community. And that came out over and over again in our conversations. People are generous, caring, come together in crisis, willing to help each other out. That theme was amplified over and over again in all of our conversations. People feel passionate about Minden Hills, passionate about the history, their connections to the community, and the values of the community. And as the township considers a strategic priority or strategic planning, it should keep front and center that really important asset, which is the residents of the community. The second sort of theme that came out was protecting the rurality of the community in the face of growth. People live here in large part because it is a rural community, and the lifestyle that provides to them, the set of values that exist in the community, is fundamentally important to folks. And although I think people recognize that there will be growth and there will be changes, they want to make sure that those changes do not alter that fundamental reality of what the community is. And so that message came through loud and clear. The third one was transforming the fear of change into embracing the future. Somebody made a comment, a couple of people made a comment about the weariness that remains after COVID-19 and all of the disruptions that had caused with you would have dealt with as a council, and we all dealt with individually, that there's a certain amount of weariness left over from that, and that there's a tendency to, and I'm describing what people said to us, there's a tendency to stay with what you know, as opposed to taking a chance on what you don't know. So that it's critically important. So my dad used to always say to me, Andy, when one door closes, another door opens. And that's, I think, critical for the community there are a series of doors that the community has a choice of walking through. It needs to overcome a natural reticence of opening that door and walking through to the other side. And this is what the community said to us. So many people in the community said, there's so much that we can do. There's so much that we want to do that we can't fear what the ramifications of that might be. And we need to take it on. Obviously, we need to manage it. We need to be careful about what we do, but we need to go ahead and do it. And so people described that as, we just need to get on with it. We need to get on with it. So that was that sort of bucket. The fourth one was a little bit more specific, and that was the downtown revitalization. So people felt that there were many things that could be done, investments that could be made, changes that could be made. People were cognizant of potential costs of doing that. I think there was a good understanding that not everything could happen all at once, but that they felt that there was a need to prioritize and to take on 2 or 3 things at the beginning. A comment that came back in some of the conversations was, nothing helps success like a success. And so the idea is to identify some specific projects, and then they may not be big at the beginning, it may be small pieces at the beginning, but if you can do them successfully, that they'll lead to the ability to do even more in the future. So people weren't thinking that everything could change all at once, but they thought there should be a need to begin and to launch a spirit of renewal through the revitalization downtown. So that was the theme. The final theme here was really people talking about its relationship with council. And so I think for the most part, people understand the fundamental role of council of managing the corporation, right? You're charged under the Municipal Act, you've got certain things you do, you establish policy, you make sure those policies are carried out by your staff. But they also spoke to a different role for council, a leadership role. People want to be led, the community wants to be led by council. It's a component beyond just your statutory responsibilities, but to be champions of the community. And when you go into the Municipal Act, particularly in terms of the head of council, it talks to that role as a community leader that goes beyond your statutory responsibilities, just as councillors and your public really, from the people that talk to us, really want to see that happen. They're looking to council to lead on a renewal or whatever direction that you choose to go. So those were essentially the 5 large buckets of findings. So what we did is we broke that a little bit further down and divided it into community assets, challenges, opportunities, and what we'd like to we've characterized as a vision for the future. And as you go through the report, the written report, you'll see those 5 main findings at the top. But as you go deeper down into the report, there is more and more detail. So we've tried to build it that way for you. So if we go on to the next slide on the community assets, community assets. I already mentioned that the prime asset is the people of the community. I took a couple of comments out of there that people talked about: a safe community to raise children, a community that comes together in difficult times. And I was struck by one of the phrases that somebody said to me in one of the, and if you want to have people come to a meeting, just tell them somebody's in trouble. And that's a hallmark of the Minden Hills community, the willingness for people to come together. The rural nature of the community is seen as an asset, right? People see that's what makes, in many people's minds, this community a very special place, the rural nature of it. And the natural heritage, people talked about that all the time. It's a beautiful community. It's been blessed with a natural heritage that is simply amazing. And people often, to be more specific, talked about the river, and they talked about the river as the heart and soul of the community. People saw the river as community is often made up of roads, buildings, and whatnot, but it's more than that. And the community has a soul, and people saw the river as exemplifying that fact. So those are some of the assets, and we go far more into detail in the reports. If you go to challenges, people talked about challenges as well. People talked about the diverse nature the makeup of your community. You have seasonal residents, you have people who live here all year round, you have younger folks, you have a big retirement community. There's people of different socioeconomic means live in the community. So it's not a monolithic society. It's got a lot of component parts to it. And so building consensus is important and can be challenging because you have a number of different interests. So that's a bit of a challenge. Many of the challenges that people spoke to, you see that list, are really national challenges or international challenges that you as a council in the community have to deal with in a local context, right? They're probably not things you by yourself or the community by itself is going to be able to solve. Although people talked about trying to find a little piece of it that we can do in our community. So things like health services, housing, internet connectivity, transportation, the high cost of living, food insecurity, all of those things people talked about, but they did recognize that they weren't specific to Minden Hills, but they were the impact was certainly being felt here. People talked about, in terms of challenges, the relationship base. We talked about the issue with council, but also with the importance of doing things collectively with surrounding communities to be able to achieve things that may be more of a challenge if one community did it than if the communities were able to come together. And that can be a challenge too in bringing different jurisdictions together. So people talked about that in terms of challenges. You go on to the next slide in terms of opportunity. People saw the small business, the strengthening the small business, tourism, and local food sectors as a means of creating local increased wealth and jobs. So that so people saw that as the mainstay of the community. People talked about employing a back to the future approach. So people talked about things that were done in the past that they thought might be a good idea maybe to return to, maybe change them a little bit because of a different reality in the middle of the 21st century. But people said, we don't necessarily need to reinvent things. We've got lots of things that worked really well in the past that we might just want to revitalize and bring back into today's context. People talked about pursuing innovative approaches to the community and broader challenges. So there were many examples, but the one that stuck out to me, somebody suggested, Andy, on housing, our seasonal residents tend to have generational housing. A cottage will be occupied by grandparents, by the kids and the grandkids, and they live or vacation together. So somebody said, maybe that's a model of the kind of housing that we might want to create in our community, because we do have multi-generational families that inhabit it. So I only pull that one out because it's an example, but people say we should try to be innovative as a community and do things differently, look at our opportunities and to build on those. And opportunities, as I said earlier, in reinvigorating the village downtown. So people came back to that theme in terms of opportunities. A vision for the future. In that discussion, there was a lot of commentary that went back and forth in terms of the issue of growth. And so most people believe that some sort of growth is inevitable, that it's going to happen. Many see it as positive. A majority of people who talk to us want to see that it is limited. But I think there was an emphasis by almost everybody that it be appropriately managed. So growth is going to happen. People want to see it happen in a managed way, and they want to make sure that the rurality of the community is maintained in whatever growth that may take place. They were pretty strong on that particular comment. And so maintaining the rural nature of the community through community development. So that was quite strongly said. So one of the things that we were asked to do was to answer 3 questions that sort of frame our mandate. And what we've tried to do is to take all of the input that we received and try to develop answers to those questions. So I'm just going to read those answers and then I'm happy to have a discussion. So the first question was who we are today. And so we asked the people that engaged with us, and we've tried to consolidate it into a response. So a small Ontario rural community with a unique heritage and a proud history. A community surrounded by extraordinary natural beauty, made up of diverse groups of year-round, seasonal, long-standing, and newer residents. One that hosts retirees and younger families, and people from a wide range of financial situations, all of whom can be described as generous and caring. It is a community that has accomplished much, is modest, and has great potential for the future. So that was us trying to bring together, what people said about that question. The second question, if we go on the next slide, where do we want to go? And so we tried to, again, consolidate people's input. Minden Hills wants to build on its natural and built assets as it renews itself in an inclusive and comprehensive manner. Building on the diversity of the residents' talents and through an invigoration of volunteerism, leveraging of social networks, and with the leadership of council, it intends to establish community priorities that address all segments of the community while contributing to an increased standard of living and a better quality of life. The journey may be long, may be challenging, but residents were quite firm in that it should begin. And so that was the answer to the second one. And then the final one, which of course here we go. What do we want to accomplish? So people saw as a result of renewal, a thriving small community that continues to be a great place to live, to visit, to retire, and raise a family, by being one that embraces change, manages growth, and remains consistent with its rural values. A community that expands its small business sector, anchored in a renewed downtown to create new wealth and new jobs. A community that rekindles the social and cultural drivers that have enriched the past and can contribute to a renewed future. And a community that finds innovative local solutions to the challenges of healthcare, housing, transportation, and poverty by building on the generosity of residents. So that's an attempt to summarize and a compilation of the input that we had. So there's other slides in there. I don't think we really need to go into that. We're happy to answer any questions about process. Hopefully we've described that in the report, but I'm happy to, Jen and I are happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Council, any questions? Councilor McKelvey?
Some of the things that came out of this for myself was that it seemed to be really focused on downtown Minden. And while that's extremely important, we didn't reach out to the rural areas enough. And I don't know if that's just really hard to get them to do that. I mean, 10% of the respondents were from Snowden, a small number from Waterworth. And
yeah, I think it's a fair point, Councillor. Whenever you do a consultation, you try to be as comprehensive as you can be. You outline some of the more rural outlying folks. We probably, we reached out for, but probably would have liked to have gotten more input from seasonal residents. They did participate, but we would have liked them to be more. Probably what some folks who may be faced with challenges, socioeconomic challenges in their life, they're harder folks to reach out to. They're preoccupied with managing their lives and to try to get folks. Probably and again, it's hard to get younger folks to get engaged to a greater extent. That's always a challenge whenever you do this. So I think, Councillor, you're quite right. One would have liked to have had more of certain groups come. Having said that, getting 700 people in a community of 7,000 to engage in a community discussion speaks volumes to your community and the passion that the people of this community have for the place they live. I can't overemphasize that enough to council. The passion of your community for the place in which they live was evident throughout all of our consultations.
Other questions? Councillor Saini?
Thank you. Just a comment that it's interesting that out of the survey, it really reflects exactly the kind of work that we're trying to do with our municipalities across rural Ontario. You've highlighted the areas that we're doing the research in: the housing, the healthcare, the internet, the projects we have going on with that, the transportation issue, cost of living, food. Those are all issues that have been identified as the top issues across rural Canada, rural Ontario. So, so it's basically reflecting a larger picture. But I also appreciate the fact, and you alluded to as well, we have a creative community here to solve those problems. And we just need to make sure that we are interacting in a way that allows that creativity to come forward. There's no better time to see that than when you're campaigning and you get the privilege of going and knocking on strangers' doors and talking to them and finding out their skills and what they can do and how to bring that forward. So I think even structurally within our governance, we need to figure out ways to make sure that becomes part of our planning process and our goals. So that strategically has to happen, I think, with the structure and how we make decisions. So thank you for that. And just one last comment, if I may. I did a survey through a project I did through Halliburton a long time ago, about maybe almost 30 years ago. And I asked people why they like living here. And the response was across the board, the view. And you've highlighted that here too. It's because of the country, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you for this work.
Okay. A couple of just comments. I think the area where, folks are saying that they're looking to council to lead, that's, precisely what this is all about. This is, putting together the plan that council can go forward with, but it's ensuring that we have the input of the community to say, what we go forward with, as opposed to just leading us all and madly off in all directions sort of thing. The other thing that's interesting, and I'm extremely happy to see, is the whole idea of the managed growth and the, keeping the rural aspect of the community. In other words, don't start building apartment buildings around every lake or anything like that. Have the growth well managed. And then, to tell everybody that one of the issues, and I've seen this happen over and over, is that when you have growth, the people that come in are not necessarily going to think in the same way. And so, at some point, you see this particularly in the areas around in southwestern Ontario, where you had agricultural communities that have now become bedroom communities. And, the people who are commuters may not think the same as the people who were, living off the land. And it adds conflict. So the idea of, we can manage the growth so that it looks the same as it did in the past, but it doesn't mean that the people who are inhabiting all those homes are going to be thinking in the same way. But I think this is an excellent starting point for anything that we do from here on in. And as you said, the 10%, you do have a wide range of views, and I think that even if we get more views, you're going to just pretty much get more of the same. So I think this is a good representative sample of what we need as our first step.
And I should mention, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
that one of the comments that we got was it was an appreciation by residents that council has embarked on this. There was appreciation that was said over and over again. We really appreciate that somebody's asking.
Any other questions? All right, do we, Madam CAO, or do you have anything?
No, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to echo Mr. Mitchell's comments. That's what I've heard is our community is very appreciative that council has endorsed us getting out and talking to our community. Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk?
Moved by Counselor McKelvey.
Oh, sorry. Counselor Sani, I didn't see it.
Yes, sorry, I know I was a little late to the speaker here. I just wanted to ask that maybe we could put this report on our website at some point so people have access to it.
Through you, councillors, or Mr. Mayor, that would be our intent. I mean, it is on our website right now as part of our agenda, but we can look at that.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that council receive staff report 2508 and the presentation from Jen Harrington and Andy Mitchell on behalf of Horizon Collective regarding the community engagement project for the Township of Minden Hills.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you both
Thank you
for
very
coming
much.
in and giving us this report today. Okay, we move on to adoption of minutes from the previous meeting. Adoption of the February 27th regular minutes. Were there any comments or amendments? Seeing none, let's read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Johansson, second by Counselor Sani, be it resolved that that council approves the February 27th, 2025 regular council meeting minutes.
All those in favor? That is carried. Payment of accounts for March 13th. Any comments or questions? Counselor McKelvey?
Just want to point out that we've paid Granicus for the year, so that's cost us $32,000 for the short-term rental work that they're doing. We're also going to pay for the roof on the facility, so ICI Roofing is being paid, I believe, their final draw of $82,490, and I'm just questioning whether we have enough holdback on that, because clearly the roof was leaking in one of the rooms here at the last meeting.
So through the chair, that invoices for the actual rooftop units that will be placed on the roof. That work still has to be done, so that is not the final draw. There's still approximately about $10,000 that of works that need to put those units on top of the roof.
Counselor McKelvey?
And the other thing I want to make sure was noticed was that we paid Kegel Heating some work on the furnace at the Irondale Community Center, but they are recommending that the furnace be replaced as it's 19 years old. So it's something we need to have staff looking into as they move forward.
Through the chair, I did note that, and it would be on my list for the 2026 budget.
Counselor McKelvey?
Two things we're paying for at the Laughlin Community Center. One is Ontario Clean Water Agency, and I'm well aware of the small drinking water systems that we have to have work in monitoring, that sort of thing. But the building has been closed for several years, so I'm questioning whether we would continue to pay Aqua to do that when it's closed. Plus, also with regard to the Laughlin Community Center, I think we're still paying the Wi-Fi there. No, I realize that. But we did have a report from Candace on this before where like it's hardly used. I think there was one little blip in July. Used to be used a lot more, but that people in that area have internet now, so. Again, I just question the need to continue to pay for things that aren't being utilized.
I think staff can look into both of those. I guess my concern that the aqua is that perhaps if you stop having it monitored, you might have to start all over again when you you go again. But I think staff can get back to us on both those items. Okay, any other questions? Let's read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Johansson, be it resolved that the accounts in the amount of $729,997.57 be approved for payment.
All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. In terms of the mayor's report, I think a very significant event occurred last week. As I'm sure most of you have seen in the newspaper or in various reportings on social media, that we had 4 individuals from Minden who received these King Charles medals that were especially issued in Canada for the coronation of King Charles. So Reverend Canon Joan Kavanaugh, Linda Litwin, Faye Martin, and Dick Shell. I guess the finest examples we have of volunteerism and people that help to make our community successful. I won't go into each of their accomplishments. All those interested, you can see it's widely reported, but I just wanted to congratulate them and thank them for all the work they have done in this community and serving as an example for many others who are also carrying on in their footsteps and volunteering and making this the vibrant community that we just heard about, in our previous discussions about people who want and love this area because of its people, and these are 4 fine examples of that. The other thing I wanted to mention, and again reported in the paper, this is particularly for Minden, always a time of year where we worry about flood. So for those of you who don't know the term, the melting of the snow at the end of the winter and turning it into water is called the freshet. And so this year we're in a situation where we have been working together with the MNRF and Parks Canada. We had meetings last week. Our situation at this point is reasonable, and I say that from a couple of perspectives. One, almost all of the lakes are at or below their average level for this time of year, and that's Parks Canada, who has been keeping the flow going through the river, so that it means that our lakes have capacity to accept a large amount of water. So you'll see that sometimes every day the river looks to be high or not quite as high, but that's moving water through the system. The second thing is that although we did get a lot of snow, Parks Canada has the capacity. Well, first of all, back to the lakes, they have the capacity to measure instantaneous the level in the lakes. So they're getting that information real time. They also have sensors that measure the depth of the snow in the forest, and they have at least a number of them that also determines the water content of that snow. So we know how much water is going to be produced by the melting of that snow. Right now, our snowpacks are above average, but not crazy above average. There is still a lot of water there. The weather forecast that we've had has been mostly dry, which is good. And the other thing that has helped us is that over the last couple of days, we've had days where it's been above zero during the day and below zero at night. So that just slows down the amount of water that has to be processed. Now, as I was quoted, the weather is fickle. And it can change pretty dramatically. And back in 19, we had that weekend where the temperatures suddenly soared into the 20s and we had a rainstorm. And that made it very, very difficult. We staff and, our emergency management group led by the fire chief and our roads crews, we've made sure that our sandbagging equipment has been taken out and dusted and got a lube and oil change, and is ready to go if we so need it. So we have made all the preparations that we can, and now we just hope that the weather will cooperate and we have a nice controlled freshet. So there's no immediate cause for danger, but it's like everything else. We have to be monitoring this every day. And again, I would say stay away from the rivers and the streams because the amount of water that's going down there could be dangerous. I did notice on one lake on the other day that there's still lots of fishing huts out there. So be careful in your recovery of those, and let's have a nice, safe, controlled spring. Councillor Saini, Roma Board.
Yes, thank you. We haven't met since the elections, so I don't have too much new to report on that, except for I expect that we'll continue to meet with the ministers as they confirm that they want to continue to meet with us on a regular basis. Particular Minister Calandras, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So you'll know that we're going to stick with what we highlighted during the campaign in terms of housing and health and transportation and the basics of our everyday life. The other thing I'm excited about is that we'll be meeting also with Jane Philpott. She has a huge work to do under our health system, as we all know. And I'm really looking forward to how she's going to move forward. That's a huge job. And as we, one of the things I think is I want to follow and how this is done is it's going to be like a system where you move from place to place, but your children always have a school to go to. So when you move to place, you'll always have a medical support to move to as well. So you are not lost in the system, but you are tracked throughout Ontario, just like kids are tracked in the sense they make sure they have access to schooling. And so the idea that's coming from some of her work is to make sure we have that. There's different levels of service and health, lots of things going on. So we'll see how that unfolds, and I'll give reports on where we think we are with that planning. It's and just really pleased that she's taken this on, having read her book. So, but I don't have anything else to report except for we'll be meeting next in April since the elections. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we're in a bit of a strange time in trying to do things because after the election, I don't think the legislature is going to meet until sometime in April, right? Mid-April or so. So, and I guess theoretically, we don't have cabinet ministers And we don't have deputy ministers. So really staff is, at the government is keeping things going, but you know, in terms of getting decisions made, it's a bit difficult for us. And there's lots of decisions that need to be made in order to, you know, help the communities, both the counties and the municipalities. So let's hope that we get that all put together very, very quickly. All right. Correspondence and communications, we have a consent agenda on that. So I'll let you read the,
Moved by Counselor Johansson, seconded by Counselor Sani, that council receives correspondence and communication items 11.1 through to 11.6 as information.
all those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to, department reports, Ms. McGuigan, you're up first with community services.
So good morning, Mayor and councilors. So bringing forth report 2407. So this is the Minden Hills Cultural Center Advisory Committee January meeting minutes. So there was originally a recommendation in the January 24th to council, but the recommendation didn't fall in the scope of the advisory committee as outlined in the terms of references. So that is why you're seeing the original minutes and then the secondary minutes where the recommendation is removed. I'm happy to answer any questions that might be.
Councillor McKelvey?
So the minutes, the minutes of January 24th that had the resolution have to remain. You can't change those minutes. You can, at the next meeting, withdraw that recommendation. But we can't just change what happened. You can't just take a resolution out of a set of minutes. So I'm just wanting to figure out what's.
Madam Clerk?
Correct. So obviously the committee reconsidered and did not want to put the motion forward. So that's not why, that's why it's not on the table today or for discussion today. But yes, it stays in the minutes, and of the committee. But it is noted in the next set of minutes why, council, didn't receive the recommendation.
Councillor McKelvey?
Okay, so what we're being given here is two sets of minutes. One doesn't have the resolution in it and one does. We can't have minutes where a resolution was passed, all of a sudden it wasn't. That's not how it works. It was passed. So the amended minutes are definitely not allowed.
And you note, through the chair, you did note that in the minutes, for that meeting, correct, Candace? The meeting that you attended where you reconsidered the motion, it's noted in that set of minutes, correct? Yeah,
For the February 11th. minutes,
Correct.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Then I would say that we should be just looking at the original, the 24th ones, and then when your minutes from the February 11th meeting come forward, then you would show that just procedurally, I think that would be
That's-
the correct way to do that. And then just show that at your next meeting, you withdraw that recommendation or withdrew that recommendation. That's just procedurally, that way I think would be the correct way to do that. It's minor, but it's just how it is.
Councillor McKelvey?
I attended both these meetings, so unfortunately at the February 11th meeting, they did not pass a resolution to withdraw that. So you'll have to get that at a future meeting dealt with properly.
So through the chair, today we can just pass the minutes, that the committee, it was circulated through the committee. So we'll go ahead and pass the minutes that are attached to the agenda,
The first set.
the first set, yeah, and then we'll circle back with the,
That's fine. Okay. Any other questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sani, seconded by Counselor Yohannesson, that council receive report 2507, Community Services Department, Minden Hills Cultural Center Committee Minutes dated January 24th, 2025 as information.
All those in favor? Is carried. Thank you. Okay. Chief Building Official, please. Join us. Talk to us about activity.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. What you have before you this morning is our monthly activity update for the building bylaw services for the month of January 2025. As you can see, permits are up slightly from the year previous at this time. We are seeing slight increase in the accessory structures, and it's, just a slight increase in dwellings as well. On-site sewage systems are down from the year previous by 3 systems. This time of year, we tend not to see too many of them getting installed. Most of them are usually an emergency situation where they have to go in. That I expect that to start increasing. Estimated construction value for the month of January was about $1.5 million. And bylaw is obviously a little bit slower at this time of year too as well. We had 8 site visits that were conducted. We had 8 new investigations done. We still have some open bylaw files that we're slowly working through. Unfortunately, it takes some time to get them taken care of. Our STR program is still ongoing and rolling out. At the time of this report, we had 22 applications to date. I double checked last night and we currently are at 63 applications for short-term rentals. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Deputy Mayor Shell.
Thank you. So the STR warning letters issued 191. Could you just explain for public to understand what that is?
So through the chair, so the warning letters were issued as to operators that were operating without licenses. And we have been getting, I'll be quite frank, inundated with phone calls from those operators in hopes that we can get them on board. We've seen a major uptick in the number of applications that we're getting.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that for the public, that it wasn't complaints about people who have STRs and that there are issues. That's all. Just, you understand what I'm saying? By the neighbor might have called and said, hey, they're too loud or whatever. So it's not that kind of a warning.
Yep.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
through the chair, that's correct. This is generated letters that are generated through our third-party provider, Granicus, and they search the STR platforms, and we initiate the letters and send the letters out. And it's basically those who are operating without licenses. This is not complaint driven. Okay.
Councilor McKelvey.
Just a question of those 63 applications now, how many have we actually issued licenses for?
Through the chair, I do not have that number right now. I can find that out for you. For the most part, we are seeing a lot of incomplete applications. People are having difficulty seeming to understand what the process is and what we require to be able to. So, and we still have, some of them are still tied up with regards to license of occupations and shore road allowance purchases because of the proximity of the dwellings and any accessory structures in the SRA.
Councilor McKelvey.
Just as another question, have we received any of the MAT tax yet? Some townships are starting to see that MAT tax coming, so.
I would defer through the chair. I would defer to our Director of Finance on that, whether she has or has not seen any MAT tax revenue at this time. It would appear we've seen none.
We've seen that. So on I know the process, particularly at the beginning, is, how to fill out the form properly. And I just went through renewing my passport, and I know that, filling out the form properly is, apparently some people take that quite seriously. But anyway, the situation of this and, all your phone calls and so on and so forth, do we have a date where we start saying, okay, you're operating illegally. Now, we're going to take action. Is there in your mind, is there a set date where we're going to say this changes from, oh yeah, we've been playing nice with you and getting you to fill out the forms properly and get your license to, okay, you can't operate this way.
Through the chair, so we do not have a hard, fast date, but I do know that council in the past has requested that we start doing active enforcement, late spring. So we are we're waiting for the snowpack to dissipate and the roads to be more accessible when it really gets going, and then we'll start doing some active enforcement at that time, knocking on doors and having conversations.
Any other questions? Counselor Saney?
Yes, at a future meeting, I think we're going to get a report back regarding septic inspections, right? At some point.
Through the chair, that's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Counselor McKelvey?
Sorry, just something else came to my head here. Property standards, we had discussed a couple of times, one was before you started, one with you here, about the need for people to have to sign on the dotted line to put in a property standards complaint. And I thought you were gonna bring something back. Deputy Mayor Shalit said that had been stopped in the previous council, but it's still there, I understand.
Through the chair, yes. So my understanding through discussions with the township solicitor is that the anonymity of a complaint could very easily be overturned if it ends up having to go to court. So that's one of the concerns that the department's having with regards to anonymous complaints, is that if we proceed to court with a property standards complaint, it could very well be dismissed at that level.
Counselor McKelvey?
So I get that if it goes to court and it's something that you can't go see, if it's a fireworks complaint or it's a noise complaint or something, we can't respond and see that happen. But when it's something like a property standards, we go out and investigate and we see it's a property standards issue. So whether or not the complainant is involved to go to court shouldn't even be applicable. That's my.
Madam CEO,
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think to Councillor McKelvey's point, I think it would be best if we took this offline and maybe brought back some information. I think there's various different examples of complaints and, visuals. I do appreciate council's position or want for more information, but I'd rather have full conversation about this if you don't mind.
I think it would be good if we could do that in late April. Right now, as the snow melts, it's going to reveal a number of things. So let's sort of get ahead of it, and if we can do sort of the late April meeting, that would be good.
We will put that on the April agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? So just, the numbers are at this point, there's not a big difference from 24 to 25 in terms of the buildings and so on, although all it takes is one to have a 50% change, I guess, in some cases. But are you seeing a slowdown, or, that was what was reported in the paper this week even?
Through the chair, at this time, we haven't seen a significant slowdown in comparison to numbers from last year. We are actually seeing applications for bigger projects. We have a project that's going in just off of Highway 35 through the Kawartha Housing Corporation. So those permits have all been approved and all that stuff. So we're seeing slightly larger projects. So to your point there, yes, it would slight the numbers in a sense because of the fact that each building that's going on that project, each gets its own permit. But as for a significant slowdown, no, I cannot say that we're seeing that at this time.
Okay, and the number of open permits, is that pretty steady, or is there any change in that?
Through the chair, I can speak to that. We sent out a bunch of letters recently, final notices for open permits and that, and we have seen a large uptake and a significant amount of permits that are being closed at this point. So older permits that have been languishing, we've been closing a lot of them off. We're going out doing site visits and knocking a lot of that stuff out. So there is a considerable amount that's being completed.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receive report 25006, Building and Bylaws Services, January 2025 monthly activity summaries information.
All those in favor? That is carried. It's 10 o'clock. We'll take a break until 10:10. welcome back, everybody. We move on to administration. Madam CAO, Madam Clerk, your report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. We're here to provide information on a request that we had to look into the Bob Lake boat launch file. And this is an extensive file that's probably been before council numerous times over the last, I'm going to say 8, 9, 10 years. I would just like to remind council, and this is before my time, that in June of 2023, you received a report, quite an extensive report that had many links to previous reports. And at that meeting, you passed a resolution and it carried not only to receive the report, but the resolution says the council does not support moving forward with a public boat launch on Bob Lake Road, Bob Lake at Claude Brown Road, pardon me, due to the location constraints, planning recommendations, and liability concerns. So that was a resolution that was passed in June of 2023. Last fall, we were asked, meaning myself and our clerk, were asked to meet with Bob Lake Association representatives, which we did. I explained that resolution from the June 23rd meeting and asked what would be new or different. Wanted to clarify what the ask was of last fall. To be fair to the Bob Lake representatives, they have looked into a number of options. They've searched for other locations, but their ask was really they can't find another location. They indicated that they had talked to the property owner at Claude Brown Road to see if there would be any appetite for a private boat launch. But that didn't seem to be the case.
Councilor Ingram?
I think we're talking about a different boat launch. We're talking about the one over on Deep Bay Road. You're talking about Claude Brown. They're requesting the expropriation is coming from another boat launch on the lake.
Okay.
You're talking about the one in Claude Brown.
Okay, so this is a different location.
Yeah, Claude Brown was,
That was the original.
Okay.
yeah, there was the one that was closed.
Okay,
Then they found another location on Claude Brown Road. That was the one that was
My apologies.
researched, and we had engineering reports and so on.
my
And
apologies.
then that was denied. This is going back to the original location of the boat launch.
Okay. My apologies, we are back to the original location. Okay, fair enough. And I do apologize for that. In the end, what the representatives indicated was that we should put a boat launch in. And what that might mean is expropriation of land. So taking land from a private property owner. And I clarified that with them. I didn't use the word expropriation. I asked them to describe what they wanted us to do. And it was to put the boat launch back in the original location. And if that meant, and they used the term expropriation, they said that's a tool available to governments. And I said, you realize that that means taking land away from a private property owner. So given the history, given that I'm not obviously up to speed on all the details, we reached out to a very large legal firm that has extensive experience in expropriation and land use planning. And we asked for a fresh perspective on the file And we wanted the question of expropriation for this purpose. We wanted their perspective on that. Council, you have received that advice from legal counsel. They characterized expropriation as a tool available to governments, but it's an extraordinary power. That is how legal counsel characterized it to us and indicated that it should be rarely used. It's the process of expropriation that they were characterizing as fraught with risks and liabilities and coming potentially at significant cost. They advised that to expropriate privately owned land, there should be a clear public purpose, and it needs to have broad application. And what they mean by that is to the majority of the public. So yes, while it is a tool, it is not recommended for this kind of purpose. It is seen as a last resort. There are many other tools like easements and encroachments, or you work out an agreement or leases that would need to be exhausted before expropriation should even be considered. I think I've shared with you, Council, that I've in other municipalities been involved in projects where there's expropriation for broad community purposes. It's very contentious. Takes some time and comes at resources and costs. So from a staffing perspective, given the advice that council has received, the associated risks and the contentious nature, staff are not in a position to recommend expropriation of a private property owner's land. In this case, it comes at reputational risk, financial risk, and tying up resources. So, Mr. Mayor, council can have their debate, but that is staff's recommendation.
Questions? Councilor Johannes.
Thank you. Not so much a question, but I just want to say a little bit. I would like to take a few minutes to speak on this matter, as I know others will as well. I'm not new to this. This is a 9-year-old file. So many staff have come and gone. Myself being on council and being in the forefront, I have heard many constituents speaking about this. Just this past summer, I was asked weekly, what is happening to our boat launch? I wouldn't be doing my job as a councillor if I did not speak on the matter and be a voice for Bob Lake. I would like to thank the staff on the revised report. I would like to thank the Bob Lake Association for the information. There is a lot to digest. The Bob Lake Association was requested reopening the original ramp as a public facility. It is now being identified as a recreational boat launch. There is a difference. It is intended to be there for all users, including the MNRF, Parks Canada, the police and first responders, and commercial users, delivering new docks and other materials. How is the MNRF, police and others expected to access the lake for wildlife management, enforcement of regulations, emergency responses, etc.? Although expropriation is the process mentioned, nothing was said about the other options, including negotiation with the property owner, or just simply declaring that the original boat launch was closed, as this was hysterically accessible by the public. Bob Lake Association and residents believe that the Township of Minden Hills has been opposed to every possible solution. I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to speak before council. I believe we need to keep the doors open for everyone. We work for them. That is why we are here. I wish we had the powers to make this all work out, but we are such a small piece of the puzzle. Bob Lake is still asking for the township's help, and as we can all see, they will not give up. I will not close the door on this, and I will keep on supporting them in hopes of a solution. Thank you.
Councilor McKelvey?
So my question is, and I asked this before and I'm not sure maybe I didn't ask it the right way, but have we, the Township of Minden Hills, ever sent a correspondence to the owner of the property where the former public boat launch was to see if they are willing to sell land? Or enter into an agreement or provide a lease or provide whatever it is.
So in the past, staff did approach and were starting negotiations, and then the owner at that time, like the owner decided not to pursue.
So we have a letter on file that we have sent. This has not been verbal conversations.
Email.
Okay, so we have a written documentation that we actually tried to do this. Because that's where I would like to go back to. Expropriation is not something I want to pursue, but I really would like to see that we look at contacting that person to enter into discussions on a purchase or a lease agreement or whatever all those other options were before we got to this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, if that's so council's wish, the Bob Lake representatives have indicated that they tried to negotiate a private boat launch, which would have meant likely less traffic than a public boat launch. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want me to respond to the concerns about others accessing the lake.
Well, sure, go ahead, because
Yeah.
it's to the best of my knowledge, MNRF, Parks Canada, police and fire have no trouble in finding a place to launch boats to get onto the lake.
Right.
It's not, this boat launch is not a hindrance to them whatsoever.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or to you, that is exactly right. And I think there's a misconception that police and fire need a public boat launch to access our lakes in terms of emergency situations. They do not. MNRF has access points and Parks Canada has access points. So the fact that there's not a public boat launch or there is does not limit their access to our lakes.
Mr. Saini?
Thank you. Through the mayor, I'm not going to be as articulate as my counterpart here. Shirley, she did an amazing job with the presentation. I want to first acknowledge that we have all new staff from when this started, and that the lawyer also came in with the file, but maybe not all of the perspectives. So what I'm bringing to this is a perspective from when this first started. And I've been on council for this whole thing. And what I have seen is every day driving past this property when I come into Minden on Deep Bay Road, this property went up for sale. When it was up for sale, there was questions about the boat launch. And whoever knows what conflict happened where the owner said no more use, I don't know. A lot of that's hearsay how that happened. But there is a liability if it's private. So what I saw happening before my eyes, I wish if I was wealthy or smart enough, I would have bought the property and solved this. You know, have you that intuitive minutes where you think, how can we avoid a clash here between the municipality and the residents here? And we could have purchased, or somebody could have purchased the land, severed it, and then sold it and still probably made a profit. It's a small area of land that we're talking about with this property. When it was for sale, I didn't purchase it. also to recognize that there was no cottage association at that time on Bob Lake. Bob Lake had roads committees because that's what they needed. What this has forced them to do, but also has other benefits, is to form a cottage association to look at all of their interests. And in that association, they have poured thousands into trying to establish a boat launch. The municipalities also put thousands into it, but so have the local residents. There's been concern that property taxes should be addressed because they no longer have access to put their boats in the lake. Does that affect property value? There's been some debate on that. Some people say it does, some people say it doesn't. I don't really know myself. But if I was buying a cottage, would I want one where I can't put my boat in the water? I doubt it. I'd look for a place I could. So the lot of things that took place when I was driving by and saw that property for sale that I never got answers to. And one of them was, as we see this fiasco starting, who built the boat launch? The boat launch obviously is not a homemade boat launch or something that you'd hire put into your home. This is a very well engineered concrete boat launch designed for a situation, what was by what's called the dam, the Loggers Dam. It's right next to where the dam was put in to do logging on Bob Lake around the Bob Lake area. So this dam was put in back in the logging days. And this boat access was back from then. So there's a big history on this and the public access to this area. The other thing that confuses me, and I've never gotten an answer to, is I represent Ward 2. That's the old township of Lutterworth. This ramp was maintained for 30 or 40 years by Lutterworth Township. And now we're saying it's not public. We had an ability and access, I believe, to, at that time, say, we've been maintaining this as a public boat launch. Why is it not continuing to be a public boat launch? We didn't move on that option at that time, and we still haven't. And now it may be too late in terms of time when we look at 8 or 9 years now. So I think we've let the community down in that way. The other concern I have, which I don't understand, is if the boat launch, which was in Lutterworth Township, and I've checked with past mayors and staff, and yes, we did maintain it. It was part of Lutterworth. Bob Lake is part of Ward 1. It's not even part of our ward. So where's the line drawn in terms of property lines? Were they paying taxes in both Ward 1 or the Township of Lutterworth and the Township of Hanson Minden? Where were the taxes being paid? How did that property line get drawn? And if that property line did get drawn there, then, and they were paying taxes in both areas, who owns the waterways? Do we sell lakes off? Because that's a lake in between those two sets of properties there. And if you go back to the issues around who paid the taxes on which land, but then also who owns the waterways. So there were agreements and treaties that Williams Treaty never addressed, as far as I know, giving up any water rights. And what this reminds me of is the same issue that we're dealing with between Moore Lake and Gull Lake, where the two levels of government, provincial and federal, without even talking to each other, by the way, took out a portage. So all of a sudden, we're losing our rights of waterways that was never given up with First Nations treaties. They should still have those rights. I do know people that have portaged from Little Bob to Bob Lake and used that ramp. I don't want to canoe that far, but they have. So that has been a portage as well. So we haven't even looked at First Nations treaties. I'm feeling like sometimes we're talking different languages. And are we talking in what we're trying to do? We are not, as I understand it and see it, really getting to the issue of this is public waters. This is a water route that should be maintained. This is part of that portage. This is part of people having access. There were letters from all sorts of businesses, sportsmen, all sorts of people in the communities who were supporting this launch and to maintain this launch and who use this launch on a regular basis. It's not just for Bob Lake, it's for our community as a whole. My concern is when I look at another perspective, and you know, when you're in a concert and you go to different places, you hear different sounds and you get different perspectives. So if I go to another place and stand in this arena, my big concern is around privatization. There were rumors of having privatization of our boat launches because they're so expensive to maintain, the legal liabilities, and what are we doing with our public boat launches? And we are struggling to maintain them. So it becomes a public-private issue to me. Are we going towards privatization with our lakes and access to them? Are we're seeing that kind of push towards, you know, privatization of schools, of healthcare? So to me, I stepped back and I looked at this broader picture, and we are denying people public access to a lake that should be a lake that under treaty, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a First Nations person, so I'm looking at this from a perspective of what I can see from where I stand, that, and my knowledge of that portages were not negotiated as being taken out in terms of the Williams Treaty and the right to access. So these are my questions that I have. So making this and maintaining this as a public access lake, not just for the Bob Lake residents, but for everybody, for people from Toronto, if they want to come up and go fishing, for people from Manitoba. I won't name any other countries at this point. I'm pretty mad at that. but I just think that we need to find a solution to bring back the public lake that was public and should be maintained as public. And also question that access that we have of this kind of privatization and find out about where those property lines were and how and why were they paying in two different areas or not in terms of the townships before they amalgamated. And once again, this is something that, you know, if you look back, I'm sure we all have some woulda, coulda, shouldas. And I could just see this unfolding 8 years ago. And I just wish that I would have had the wherewithal to figure out how to buy it and solve it and do it. But I don't have that kind of capital. We didn't have the organization or I don't think the will to do that at that time. But there was an opportunity before the property was resold to the present owner to do that, and we didn't do it. And we should have. That is my biggest concern, along with avoiding privatization of our lakes. So thank you for this time. I'm not going to go on with my other notes here. But I appreciate how well articulated my Councillor Johannesson's presentation was. Thank you.
So I feel bad for some of the people on Bob Lake that this has happened over what, eight plus years ago. However, at this point, you know, we are faced with the reality that is on the ground today. The property was sold. The owner, for whatever reason, insurance or whatever, and determined that they could not operate the boat launch there. You know, there are some people who are upset with that, but it's, let us say, it's not everybody on Bob Lake who's upset with that. I've heard from lots of people who live on Bob Lake who, I guess, have their own access to the water or whatever, and they're not, they're not concerned about this situation. So it is a subset of the people and the association. I've spoken to two lawyers over the last couple of years. When we start talking about expropriation, the tests for expropriation are pretty clear. Often it's used to, widen a road or build a hospital or build a school or, put in some sort of a utility corridor or whatever. If the town were to expropriate somebody's private land, it would almost certainly be appealed to the OLT. There's a very good chance that we would lose that battle because we're not going to be able to prove that it was fair and necessary and so on. We could be on liable to pay all of our legal fees, all the legal fees of the person whose land we're trying to expropriate. And even if we were to win, there's a good chance then you would have to settle on what is the value of that piece of land. And then the municipality would have to pay for that. So the issue that has come before us, and one of the reasons why staff went out to a new lawyer recently for this latest opinion, was to get somebody who was not tainted by the history and was going to be able to look at the facts of the matter and provide us advice. We have been provided advice by lawyers to not go forward with this expropriation. The risk and the cost is I don't know, more than what the municipality and everybody in the municipality should be on the hook for. So there is the history, but we have to be making the call that is in front of us today. We have legal advice. If the Bob Lake Association, really wants to go forward with this, they have every right to negotiate with the owner of the land to see if they can buy the land. But I don't feel that, we should be making the decision of taking the people of Minden Hills along on this journey to pay for, for this or pay for the potential risk of this. So we have comments from our staff, comments from our lawyers, and that's where we're at today, I think. Deputy Mayor Shell.
In hindsight, absolutely what Councillor Saini said. Had we known that we actually did not own the boat launch and it was coming up for sale, I think Minden Hills probably would have looked at purchasing it. It's unfortunate that that didn't happen. But this council and previous councils and staff have spent tens of thousands of dollars. The first year to get boats off the lake, which turned out to be, I can't remember the amount we spent. It was more than $1,000 a boat for the people who actually used the launch. I believe it was, Mr. Ingram might remember, 12 people to 15. It was very minimal that were actually affected and needed it. The amount of money that has been spent currently. So, and we have, every time an option has come forward, has been investigated by staff. Council has considered it. We've had delegation after delegation before us. We've looked at the Claude Brown Road several times now. It's not a viable option. So to say that we haven't been considering it, I just feel like at this point we're out of options, and I personally am not interested in expropriating somebody's land for this. I would also like to recommend or remind council that all lakes within the municipality do not have access. There are many lakes that don't have a boat launch on them. And I can assure you, as the former fire chief's wife, that if they need to get onto a lake, they will absolutely get onto a lake, and the police, MNRF as well. That is never an issue. So for the Bob Lake people to use that as an excuse, that's not even viable for this. And not to say that they don't have concerns and that they're not viable concerns, but I feel like we've beat this to death here for 9 years and done everything that's come before us and investigated every single option. So I'm happy to close it at this point, unless something new comes up and there's another idea, then I'm sure we'll look at it again like we have every time it's come forward the past 9 years.
So McKelvey.
So just a little bit of clarification needed here. First of all, Lutterworth and Anson, where the boundary line is, was established many years ago when the Crown Patent came in. So Bob Lake people didn't pay taxes in both townships. But this particular boat launch at the dam was in Lutterworth Township. It was maintained by Lutterworth Township. It was maintained by the Township of Minden Hills after the amalgamation. I really strongly feel that, yes, not all lakes have boat launches, but those that had a boat launch and the township was maintaining it should definitely never, ever be stopped. So I'm not prepared to take any expropriation action whatsoever. But I'm not convinced that we didn't try with the owner, or that we shouldn't try with the owner of the land now to take a piece of that property. Now, to say that Bob Lake can go out and negotiate, they would have to negotiate the entire piece of the property. Well, they can't get a severance. Now, the township doesn't need to go through a severance to get a small piece of property off a larger lot. So I still want to ensure that we have at least tried that process in a letter to the owner, expressing our interest to see if they have any willingness to do that. The other thing I need to clarify is, and I could be wrong, I have been an avid user of the boat launch at Bob Lake. There's some good fishing in there. So some that don't want the access to become public probably is to protect their fishing rights, but I don't believe it ever had concrete. But anyways, it was definitely maintained by the township. There was parking locations there, albeit small amounts, but I want to make sure that we have at least approached this owner to find out if they're interested. As far as the Claude Brown Road site, it was done. We passed a resolution. Like, that has nothing to do with today's conversations.
Do you have something?
So through the chair, so the resolution, or the recommendation and the resolution that's drafted today basically denies expropriation of private property. Did you want to amend that last line? So it would be Deputy Mayor Shell and Councillor McKelvey, because we have that council deems the matter of Bob Lake boat launch at Claude Brown Road location be closed. So that's what I'm saying. So
that part would be incorrect. We'd have to put the
Correct.
proper address, but I mean, I'm fully prepared to support what Councillor McKelvey has said. If staff want to reach out and see if, the property owner is interested in selling, but I mean, other than that location, I'm not sure that there's much more we can do. So if we want to do one last kick at the can, I'm supportive, but not at thousands of dollars of legal fees towards the municipality that we're going to find out that nobody's interested.
Councillor Sini.
I think we need to table this motion and not vote on appropriation today. I think we need to table it. So I'm putting a motion forward that we table this until we do further investigation of options. If there's a seconder for my tabling this or not.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, and then perhaps clerk can jump in. I think you have to give us some direction on expropriation. Okay, whether it's this location or others, are we prepared to expropriate land? This motion does not say the council would never consider other options. It's just the notion of expropriating private property.
And if I may, I have heard council's comments today. Staff are happy to further reach out and contact the property owner to investigate options. That's how I can draft the motion, and then we'll bring back an update to council
Okay,
at a future meeting.
I could agree to that as long as this is a letter to the owner asking if they're willing to go into negotiation or something like that. But this is not the start of another multi-year process. This is a pretty much a binary thing. Are you interested? If it's no, it's no.
Correct.
And we stop this. We're spending way too much time and money on this. So we have other things that have to be done in the township. So I would agree that we would send the one letter, and that becomes the end. Councillor Saini.
So does that mean there's nobody here interested in tabling this motion until we get that further information? I'm not saying whether I'm for or against the appropriation. I agree that we spent a lot of time and money on it, but it's our own fault as a council over the years. And also, we've got to realize that the Bob Lake Association and the members there have spent over $10,000 on this as well. So yeah, this has been a very boondoggle of whatever it's called, but I don't want to close any doors at this point. I want to be able to have a more full discussion with some of the issues that have been raised and some of the possibilities before we start closing another door, because for 8 years, we've been closing one door at a time in this direction. Let's keep the door open, put this motion as on table, and stop going with closing one door at a time so we have less and less area to talk about. And it's not because I'm for or against appropriation. Certainly the lawyer presented some good cases, in his report about not appropriating. I can say that other roads that I have known about in similar private situations had different legal opinions on them from what we got from our lawyer this time. I don't think this lawyer has seen the full history of this situation and has the same perspective as some of us do. We just did a community consultation for all of Minden Hills and what do we want. And then the first thing that happens when we come to something at the table here is we're blocking the doors, one door at a time, one window at a time. I would love to table this motion and see what else we can do here and move forward. I do not like having to invest more money into this, but we've got to be fair to everyone. Thank you.
Councillor Ingram.
Through the chair. I think I agree with you, Mayor. We've beat this to death. I think the only option left is to have a conversation with the landowner. If he says no, it's no, as the mayor said. But to say we haven't done anything in the past 8 years is totally false. The options, they don't like them. I understand that, but don't sit there and say we haven't done anything or exhausted. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this. And we've all agreed that it's not acceptable the way it is. I will not expropriate a private landowner's property to put a boat launch in. I will not agree with that ever. And I don't think the majority of council would agree with that. So I'm not sure what your motion is going to do. We've already asked the CAO to go and talk to the boat launch owner or the property owner. What else can we do? We've already done it all. Thank you.
Madam CAO.
Thank you. And I'll just make one last comment, and then I think our clerk is ready. I'm buying her a bit of time. I would recommend that council make a decision on the expropriation question before we approach the property owner. I will ask you to put yourself in the shoes of the property owner as well. We're considering the Bob Lake Association, and I think that's very fair, but put yourself in the shoes of somebody who may be approached and expropriation of their property is still on the table. And that's an extreme measure.
I think that's a wise decision. So, Councillor Sandy, before you, is there somebody who is willing to second Councillor Sandy's motion to table this? Seeing none? Right.
I don't want to put my hand up as being a seconder to the motion. I had a question. That's so
Oh.
that's why I was a little bit. I'm just trying to figure out what Councillor Sandy's. So you're trying to leave expropriation on the table. Is that what?
I don't like,
Sorry. Okay.
Sorry,
so that,
Through the mayor.
that's your question, Ms.
thank you.
I'm just
Yes.
trying to figure out why, what the method and the madness of tabling, and I don't mean that in a derogatory.
It's fine. Okay, Councillor Sandy.
Thank you. Through the mayor. I don't like appropriation of any land. But I also recognize that every time over the years that this has come to council, that we have slowly been closing windows on this. And these windows just put less and less dialogue happening between this committee, this group. Even the language we use, tainted by the background. Am I tainting the background by saying that this property was for sale and we had an opportunity to buy it? No, I don't think so. I think that's part of the picture. We're calling it a file when this is people's lives that we're talking about and access to public property. So I don't want to spend any more money. I think we have spent a lot of time and money on this, but I think we've done it in a way that we are not really being conciliatory and trying to find all the options. And an example of that is not approaching directly the present property owner.
Okay,
It's
so-
too late to contact the past property owner on this. So I can see the want to say that we're not going to appropriate the land. And I would have to support, I do not like to see the appropriation of the land. But knowing the history here and the lack of I gotta be careful what I say here. I'm just not happy with this file. Thank you.
Okay, so just a couple of things to respond to that. You talk about us closing doors and so on. I look at it as making decisions as opposed to closing doors. We have been, entertained options, and those options, have not necessarily worked. When the Claude Brown Road came to before us, there were a whole number of reasons why it shouldn't go forward, but we listened to the association, and we went out and agreed that we would pay half of an engineering study on it. It turned out that it was not a viable alternative, and we closed the door on that. So it's just making decisions so we can go on. This is my opinion, but if we do not take expropriation off the table at this point, if I was the landowner, I certainly wouldn't be wanting to have any discussion as long as that was hanging out there. So, in my estimation, we need to take that off the table. We make the approach to the landowner, which we have already done in the past, but we will do it again. And we will get the final answer on it. But we just can't keep kicking around this and not making decisions because it's costing just are discussing this means we're not discussing something else for everybody in Minden. So we need to move on. So Counselor Saney, you put a motion on the table to table this item. Is there a seconder? Seeing none. All right. Could we have the motion? Counselor Saney.
Yes. Can we look into the amalgamation and where the property line was at that time as well, is what I'd like to see. Thank you.
No, that has nothing to do with what's facing us today. If Bob Lake Association or whomever wants to pay for a lawyer to go back into through the history books, and you can get the federal government to talk about treaties or whatever, that's fine. But that's not what's on the table before us. What's on the table before us is a request from the Bob Lake Association to expropriate private property for the purpose of building a boat launch. So Councillor McKelvey.
Just to clarify, there's no request on here from the Bob Lake Boat Launch. They sent us a letter asking to be a delegation and it was denied. We have a report on here from our CAO. We need to deal with that. On the end, I am fully supportive that we will not consider expropriation, but I need to hear what the rest of that resolution was going to say.
Before you do that, to correct Councillor McKelvey, the reason the Bob Lake did request us to expropriate. It's not in today's letter, but that's why we went out to get the lawyer.
We don't have it today's letter. We have.
Anyway, in moot, let's go with the resolution.
So before I read the resolution, the amendment would be if Council or Deputy Mayor Shell and Councillor McKelvey is agreeable to the amendment, it would be and further that staff contact the property owner to determine interest and that staff provide an update to council at a future meeting. No.
In selling land.
I just want to, it's just to contact the property owner, just to determine if there's any interest, like. Well, and I'm wondering if council is agreeable to this, if we leave it open that council or that staff can have a discussion with them on what they are actually open to, then we can bring back to council whatever they are proposing and are agreed to. I mean, we can even, sorry.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Shell.
I think that this motion should just deal with the expropriation and have that closed and let staff do their whatever after maybe. I think it should be pretty clear in the motion that the expropriation is off the table.
It is. I've left that in there, Deputy Rochelle. Oh, interesting. Okay. Interesting. So, through the chair, so it would be so that the amendment that would be and further that staff contact the property owner to seek interest in a land agreement. Is council comfortable with that wording? I'll read right from that. Yeah. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receive report 2506 administration 2025 Bob Lake boat launch update as information, and that council denies the request to expropriate private property for a residential boat launch. Recreation. Okay, I'll just change that to public boat launch. Okay. And further, that staff contact the property owner to seek interest in a land agreement. And further, that staff provide an update at a future council meeting.
Councillor McKelvey.
Did we not specify the property we're talking about?
Well, I
Because-
think I don't want to get into, I think what we'll do is when we research, we want to make sure through GISing and we
But
may,
if we make reference to the site of the former public boat launch.
okay.
At least narrows down what part of the lake we're talking about here and whether it's in Lutterworth or Anson.
Okay.
I mean, you could put it as a one on Bob Lake Road if that helps you, because that's where it was.
Through the chair, I just have former boat launch. Is that? Yeah, okay.
Read it again from the top, this time with feeling.
Bob Lake Road? Is that the actual Bob Lake Road? Yeah,
Boat launch adjacent.
okay, let's just take a 5-minute break and because I'm gonna have to rewrite this.
All right, take a 5-minute break. Okay, welcome back. Madam Clerk, you have an amended resolution that's typed out and
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's moved by Deputy Marshall, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receive report 2506 administration 2025 Bob Lake boat launch update as information, and that council denies the request to expropriate private property for a public boat launch, and further that council directs staff to contact the property owner of the former boat launch adjacent to the dam to seek interest in discussing a land agreement for a public boat launch, and that staff provide an update to council at a future meeting.
all those in favor? That is carried. Minden Volunteer Awards, who's taking that one?
I am.
Okay,
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, staff just want to thank council for bringing this to our attention. It's a very important program to get up and running. So the report before council today is regarding the local level recognition awards to recognize those amazing volunteers and individuals, including groups that provide that extra effort and involvement in the community. Past history is provided within the report, which outlines the awards that were carried out at the time, and how the programming has evolved to current date. Council just requested staff to bring these awards forward just to initiate the discussion and get the program up and running again. And staff is recommending to proceed with the programming and include all 6 awards. Advertising would commence in November. Once we receive the submissions and collect all the information, that deadline for the submissions would be around March in 2026, and then the applications would be reviewed in a closed session meeting. And we're hopeful that the recognition of the awards would be acknowledged during that volunteer recognition week, which usually it happens in April. So happy to address any questions that council may have.
questions? Councillor McKelvey?
So you're talking about like the Gordon A. Monk Award, the Good Neighbor Award, the Ross Rigney Award, is that award?
Correct.
Or
So-
you're just dealing with the senior?
No, this is all the awards. So all 6 awards, which is I'll just name them all. So it's the Good Neighbor Award, the Ross Rigney Award, the Gordon A. Monk Award, and then the other 3 that were introduced are the Arts and Culture Award, Sports and Recreation Award, and the Trillium Award.
Yeah, got it.
That's the next report, Councilor McKelvey.
Okay, any other questions? None, please read.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councilor McKelvey, that council receives report 2507 administration, Minden Hills Volunteer Awards as information, and that council concurs with staff's recommendation to proceed with 6 volunteer awards.
All those in favor? That is carried. Senior of the Year Award.
Oh, sorry, my microphone was not on. My apologies. Basically, the eligible and criteria is in within the report. The deadline to the ministry is April 30th. Staff is requesting the applications be received on or before March 26th. And then we will forward those applications to council for review at the closed session meeting. The ministry selection process is once they receive the nominee's application, and if all the criteria is met, what they do is they mail staff a certificate here at the township. It's generally 3 to 4 weeks after they receive the application. And then the staff would provide that certificate. And we're hoping, if council's agreeable, that as Seniors Month is in June, we would bring it to that June 26th council meeting to present the award. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Councillor Ingram.
Through the chair, where do people get forms? Fill these out.
So it's on the ministry website, and I can actually download them and basically all I'm asking from is just their contact name, first and last name. The rest of it staff would fill out. Like
Oh.
we would fill out the like where the certificates gets mailed to, the contact information for staff if there's any questions. But what we need for the nominee submission is first and last names, their address, telephone number.
So McKelvey.
Okay, so anybody can put in a name and submit this on their own then? This is going to be a council submission? I just want to make sure I understand what we're asking.
So through the chair, in the past, that's how we've handled it. It's council, anybody that wants to put forward a name, they would reach out to members of council, or a member of council would put forward the names. And then we would review the application.
Okay. Is there any way of finding out who has been nominated by the township in the past for this?
I could look into it. I just don't know
Okay.
how far
I don't
back
mind
I
you
would
doing
have
a bunch of work.
record.
I didn't
Yeah.
know if we kept track. of it.
It's on the wall right here. I don't know if it's out there. Gord Monks is out there and yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you want names before the 26th of March.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. And just so we understand, so to be eligible, you have to be at least 65 years of age, a resident of Ontario, a living person who has made their community a better place to be lived in, nominated by a municipality in Ontario. So you cannot be nominated, you can't nominate yourself. Someone who's passed away, or an elected federal, provincial, municipal representative, or political appointee. That.
Well, that and the fact that, 3 or 4 of us have just been eliminated from the contention because we're on council. How fair is that? All right, any other questions? Please read the motion.
Moved by Councillor Saney, seconded by Councillor Hannison, that council receive report 2509, Administration Ontario Senior of the Year Award as information, and that council submit nominees into the clerk on or before March 26, 2025.
All those in favor? That is carried. While you get relocated, I'll read the next resolution. Be resolved that council proceed into closed session at 11:16 a.m. for the purpose of discussing the following. 3 items pursuant to section 239 2D of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding labor relations or employee negotiation. Changes to workload for one of them and compensation benefits for specific employees for the other 2. 1 item pursuant to section 239 2F of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, a legal opinion. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Who moved in second?
So that was moved by Councillor Saney, seconded by Councillor Hannison.
All those in favor? Is carried. Go immediately into close. All right, welcome back. And Madam Clerk, could you read the resolution to bring us back to open?
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell. Be it resolved that closed session adjourned at 12:28 PM and open session resumed.
All those in favor? It is carried. Report from closed session.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Johansson. Be it resolved that the direction given in closed session be approved.
All those in favor? That is carried. Bylaws.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Johansson. Be it resolved that bylaw 2535 to appoint an integrity commissioner be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? It is carried. Confirming bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Marshall, that bylaw 2532, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its meeting of March 13th, 2025, be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? That is carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey. Be it resolved that the March 13th, 2025 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 12:29 PM.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. The next regular council meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 27th at 9 AM. Enjoy